Oh, hi. I'm Owlbear Rogue. Welcome to the cave. It's almost spooky season. Your gal Owlbear is just as pasty white in real life as this adorable little cave-dwelling avatar is. I was meant to be herding cattle on a cold, rainy Scottish hillside somewhere. So, needless to say, I'm a fall-winter person, and I come to life with every leaf that falls. I've got a spreadsheet ready for my 3-day Halloween movie marathon. I've started wearing super soft socks to bed at night, even though it's not even close to cold enough for that yet, and I keep having to kick them off halfway through. Anyway, I'm ready, and I want you to be ready too. I love to do a Halloween one-shot every year for some of my regular players. It's a great way to celebrate a holiday together as a gaming family and mix things up, get a break from the routine of a longer campaign. Also, Halloween stories lend themselves so well to translating into tabletop adventures. I've been kicking around the idea of doing a video about things I've learned about telling stories in games from some of my favorite fall films. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that. Another fun thing I like to do for my players when I do a Halloween one-shot is give them special Halloween dice. You can get multiple sets, groups of sets of blood splatter dice on the internet that are very affordable. It makes people feel special, and every time we do another spooky one-shot, I remind them to bring them back with them so that they have their blood spattered dice for each spooky adventure. Anywho, if you also like to run Halloween games for your friends, you're in the right place. I'm going to be posting a new homebrew Halloween one-shot every Thursday for the rest of the month. You'll have 3 fun new options and some time to make it your own before October. The one-shot I've got for you tonight is called The Midnight Relic, a Gothic Horror Heist, and it is a highly polished gem. The one shot, that is, not the relic. Unless you want it to be. Of course, the Midnight Relic is really a generic kind of MacGuffin. You can make it whatever you want, but we'll talk more about that later. I created this one shot for a group of new players, some friends of mine who work in a local oddities shop. They're all goth gals to one degree or another, and they, of course, voted for a Gothic horror-themed adventure. I went all out on designing some maps for this one and got them printed up. They turned out very, very sexy. If you think a good map is sexy, welcome. You've come to the right cave. I also recently volunteered running some games at DragonCon. I did a whole video about that last week you should check out. I decided this would be a good one to take to that event. And by the way, seriously, check out that DragonCon video. The algorithm is real mad at me that I took a week off for DragonCon. It's not doing so hot, so it would appreciate some love. Anyway, this adventure is beginner friendly, has a good mix of different kinds of action, and of course those sexy maps. I brought it to DragonCon and ran it for 5 different groups there, and I've run it once more since coming back. That means that 40 players have gone on this adventure. They've helped me fine-tune this bad boy. You can fit so much horror in this guy. And now I'm going to pass it on to you, my dark gift. Again, this one shot is called The Midnight Relic, a Gothic Horror Heist. It runs about 3 to 3.5 hours with breaks. Your friends will be playing members of a secret society called the Scarlet Sash. For the record, I did not create the Scarlet Sash. They're featured in Candlekeep Mysteries. There's not a ton of information about them. The gist of it is they're a secret society of were-ravens. That's right, were-ravens. What could be cooler, what could be Halloweenier than were-ravens? These were-ravens take a sacred vow to collect dangerous, evil, magical objects and hide them away from the world where they can never fall into the wrong hands. That's all I needed to know, and it's all you need to create a cool group of PCs who all know each other, are specially trained, and have a built-in motivation to go a-questing. Because I was running this game at an event, I made pre-gen characters, level 3, but you can absolutely let people make their own. Because were-ravens, like werewolves and other were-creatures, they're creature. Anyway, they're made and they're not born. So it stands to reason that were-raven isn't really the species. Before becoming a were-raven, presumably the character spent many years being tieflings or dragonborn or elves, humans, etc. So I have the regular character sheet for people with a normal species, and then I give them an additional sheet of paper with some special were-raven abilities. There's a monster stat block for were-ravens in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Now, side note, there's a lot of cool stuff in Van Richten, and I used a lot of it for this adventure. I know giving money to WotC is not everyone's favorite thing right now, and for good reason. But if you are thinking about getting books and want to know which ones are most useful, I really like Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Anyway, I read through the were-raven stat block in the book. I wound up cherry-picking some things from that and tweaking them just a little bit. The were-raven abilities I gave the players are as follows. The first is Shape Changer. You can use an action to morph into a raven-human hybrid, a raven, or back into your true humanoid form. You gain a fly speed of 40 feet in the hybrid form and 60 feet in raven form. Other than size and speed, your statistics are the same in each form. You revert to your humanoid form if you die. Side note, again, in Ravenlaw or in Van Richten's, it specifically says when you change shape, your equipment doesn't transform and it's dropped. Me, I like dealing with stuff and practicalities as little as possible. You're never going to catch my players counting their arrows. Let's just say that. So I decided to treat this more like a druid's wild shape ability, where their stuff is just kind of absorbed if they become a raven and comes back when they go into their hybrid or humanoid form. It's really up to you. The second ability is mimicry. As a were-raven, you can mimic simple sounds you've heard, such as whispering, screams of pain, or the cries of a wild animal. A creature that hears the sound can identify it as an imitation with a successful DC 15 wisdom check. In the book, the check is only a 10, but I made it a 15. I've mentioned before, I spent many real-life years working with wild animals. I've had some very close corvid friends, and they are excellent mimics. They also drool a lot. Did you know birds can drool? They do it when they're excited about tree toes, which is something we have in common, and they love to decorate with the entrails of mice and rats, something we, thankfully, also have in common. Just kidding. Probably. My main point is I feel very justified with my DC of 15 here. The final special ability they have is Beak! Stabby, stabby, stabby. When in hybrid or raven form, the were-raven can use its bonus action to make an attack with its beak. +5 to hit, 1d4 plus 3 piercing damage. That's what these PCs can do. Here's the teaser I give my players for the Midnight Relic, a Gothic Horror Heist. A vampire has collected a dark relic. It's your sworn duty as a member of the Scarlet Sash to find it and protect the innocent from its power, whatever the cost. You and your Scarlet Sash compatriots make up a secret society of were-ravens dedicated to finding dangerous magical items and hiding them safely away from the world. You have intel that Lord Amdus, an eccentric noble you've long suspected to be a vampire, has acquired an artifact of dubious power and tucked it away in the top of his library tower. You've managed to get your talons on a handful of invitations to a masquerade party Amdus is hosting at his secluded manor tonight. Can you infiltrate the nefarious festivities, find the relic, and make it out alive? Of course, when you're robbing a vampire, you risk far worse fates than death. Mwah, mwah. I begin by reading the prompt to them. After that, if they're using pre-gen characters, I would have them choose who they're playing, with that adventure scenario fresh in their minds. Give them a minute to get familiar with their character sheets and were-raven abilities. Once they've done that, there's an optional tool you can introduce. Because I was running this at a convention for strangers who were going to have varying skill levels, very limited time to play, and probably very limited familiarity with each other, I chose to make things simple and give them an object, a crystal eye, supplied to them by the Scarlet Sash. Since they don't know what the Midnight Relic is, this dangerous item they have to find, and they only know vague information that it's somewhere in the library tower, I give them the crystal eye to act as a sort of dowsing rod or Geiger counter to help them find the object and know for sure that they have the right thing. If they hold the crystal eye up to their own eye, they'll see a faint green mist indicating the general direction they need to go in to find the Midnight Relic. They can use it as many times as they want. There's no real need to explain why or how the crystal eye works. Your players are just going to be happy to have the guidance. They'll recognize it as a tool for them. Now, if I was playing with an experienced, familiar group in the comfort of my home, I would probably skip the crystal eye and let them explore without it. It's really about your group, your personal preference. If you introduce it, have the group decide which PC is going to be trusted with this important object. Once that's done, it's time for the adventure to begin. I describe their approach to Lord Amdis' estate in a carriage provided to them by the Scarlet Sash. I set my Gothic horror scene here with remote location in the woods, crumbling statuary, an imposing manor house, grand courtyard illuminated by lanterns. I describe dozens of other guests arriving. I make sure to note that, contrary to what you expected, some of these carriages are quite humble. Not all the guests ascending the stairs, invitations in hand, are dressed in the same level of finery you would expect for a nobleman's masquerade ball. Here and there around the courtyard are strange little creatures, standing about 4 feet tall. They have the heads of different woodland animals. For example, there's one with the head of a rabbit that seems to be checking invitations at the top of the stairs. One has the head of a raccoon, another, over there, the head of a fox. But from the neck down, they have humanoid bodies, dressed in servants' clothes. Oddly, though, you notice their legs bend backwards. As a DM, you will know that these creatures are darklings, small fey creatures. You can find the stat block for them online. I've made these Lord Amdis' servants, and if your players care enough to try to figure out what's going on with them, they may detect that he's cast illusion magic just over their heads for tonight's festivities, to give them the appearance of these woodland creatures. Their real faces aren't nearly so cute. But for now, all your players need to know is that these servants are here and there, guiding them up the front steps towards the one who wants to see their invitations. With that, I let my players know they're officially unleashed. I say something along the lines of, "And I leave you here, on the steps of Lord Amdis Manor. The evening is yours. What would you like to do?" Most of the parties have simply gone ahead and gone up to the rabbit-headed darkling and given them the invitations that the secret sash secured, or the Scarlet Sash secured for them. A few times, though, people have wanted to send a sneakier party member around to explore the outside of the manor house a little bit. On an unsuccessful sneak attempt, a servant materializes out of the hedges and guides them back to the entrance. On a successful sneaky sneak, you can give them the information that there's a tower in the northwest wing of the manor. This seems likely to be the library tower. You don't see any other towers. You can also describe that there are large hounds wandering the grounds in the distance, and in the trees are strange, unsettling, vaguely bird-like creatures hiding among the dark branches. I tell them that while the front of the manor seemed to be well lit and lived in, much of the manor you're seeing back here is dark and quiet. With a high enough DC, high enough roll, they might detect a whiff of decay. You want to make the area outside the manor seem dangerous and not particularly interesting, so that the party isn't tempted to sneak into the tower that way. You don't want them missing out on the masquerade, after all. Attending a vampire's ball is half the fun of this one-shot. Once the party's back together and ready to join the festivities, they can go up the stairs give their invitations to the rabbit-headed servant at the entrance. This servant tells them the following. Lord Amdis welcomes you to his home. Tonight's theme is the hunt. He humbly asks that you indulge him by wearing special masks he's procured for everyone's amusement. With that, the servant holds each invitation up to a lantern, and a mark appears on the back. A mark the Scarlet Sash did not detect when they stole these invitations for you. He speaks again. Once you're inside the hall, some of you will go to the left to receive your special masks, and some of you will go to the right. Do not fret, you will be reunited with your party as soon as you receive your special mask, and you may enter the festivities all together. This is going to delightfully unsettle your players. They're going to be even more intrigued and anxious when you immediately ask them to roll a d10. You, my darling DMs, will have a roll table with 10 entries. 5 animals that are predators and 5 animals that are prey. You can feel free to make up your own table. Mine is as follows. 1, fox. 2, snake. 3, bear. 4, spider. 5, owl. 6, now we're into the prey. Rabbit. 7, mouse. 8, stag. 9, boar. And 10, moth. Don't tell them just yet what their animal is, or anything about the predator and prey business. That's for you to know, and them to stress about just a little bit longer. Simply tell them that they're going to the right when they enter, if they rolled a 1 through 5, or to the left if they rolled a 6 through 10. As they're shooed on inside, they see some people lining up on the left and some on the right, as directed. At the end of each line is a table with more woodland creature-headed servants handing out masks. If they make some decent rolls about what's going on here, the difference between each line, there's a few things they might learn. Anything above a 10 shows them that the people on the left are all getting masks of prey items, and those on the right are getting masks of predator animals. A roll of 15 or above might have them notice that those in the prey line seem to be much more poorly dressed than those in the predator line. They're probably going to get the idea that it's better to be predator here during the hunt than prey. They may try some line switching shenanigans. You can decide how successful they are at that. You know, as the DM, that there's really actually nothing nefarious about these masks themselves. They're not magic. They're beautifully made. Very stylized, Black Forest style. And I'm talking about the Black Forest style of decor from 19th century German countryside, not the cake. Black Forest cake is very good, though. Could be a good snacko for this one shot. Anyhow, it really makes no difference if your players wind up with the predator masks or the prey masks, except that it will color how they roleplay in the masquerade. The vampires within are going to react differently to people with predator masks on, treating them as peers, than they are people with prey masks on, treating them as future snacks to be subtly played with. But again, your players don't know any of this yet. Once everyone's got their masks, you can tell them which animal they rolled. That's what their particular mask looks like. Next, describe how the party gets back together and is ushered to stand with their backs up against a wall. An illusory figure, who must be Lord Amdis, appears and gives a kind of magically pre-recorded message. He welcomes them all, thanks them for indulging him in the theme of the evening, the hunt. He encourages them to enjoy the festivities to their fullest, as if there was no tomorrow. With that, the illusion of Lord Amdis disappears, and the part of the floor they're standing on and the wall behind them rotate, putting them into a ballroom. Very, very Scooby-Doo style. This is important because the main feature of this ballroom is that there are no visible windows or doors, no obvious means of escape. That's something your players will probably come to notice quite quickly as they start exploring the room, but don't give that away right at the get-go. You can make this ballroom look any way you like. I had fun designing it. I made a map. Not because I expected combat in this space. I didn't put grid lines on it. Sometimes when you put grid lines on the map, everyone goes, oh, we're supposed to fight something here, and that's not the case. It was more to help everyone visualize this space. The decor in this space was very inspired by a scene from a fantasy novel I read as a kid, from a series called The Half-Blood Chronicles by Andre Norton and Mercedes Lackey. In it, there's a part where a powerful old evil elven lord holds a ball, and he puts a glamour over the ballroom so that it appears as if everyone is in a beautiful woodland scene. In my ballroom, I describe how they can still see the basic features of the ballroom. There are round marble tables scattered about that people have gathered around to talk and eat. But a powerful illusion has been cast over the room, so that there's also the appearance of snowdrifts and beautiful shining ice on the floor. There are frosty trees here and there with magically tamed woodland creatures laying about. Some squirrels and birds in the trees, rabbits, foxes, and deer wandering placidly among the guests. The whole space is lit by candlelight. People are dancing around a particularly grand tree in the middle of the room, covered in snow and glowing lanterns. Thus commences the first goal laid out in our adventure description. They need to infiltrate these festivities. This is the roleplay heavy section of the adventure, and there's really something for every kind of PC in here. Those who are charming or just generally more interested in conversation can spread out and chat up the NPCs. I describe the room as fairly crowded with them. There's about 100 guests and around 25 of the little woodland creature-headed servants bringing around trays of food and drink. You can populate this space with any NPCs you like. I had a few ready with descriptions of their names, appearance, general demeanor, any information they may have that's relevant to the players. I encourage you to make these folks up on your own. It's a lot of fun. But here's the ones I created. Of course, there's Lord Amdis. He's lurking in the shadows in an elaborate silver wolf mask and a wolf pelt over elegant black robes. If your party is brave enough to approach him, he'll be charming, vaguely threatening, and mysteriously disappear after he's tired of talking to them, almost like he turned into mist and floated away. He's a monster, and I've said it before, I will say it again and again. The less time your players spend seeing monsters clearly and up close, the scarier they will be. Limit access to Amdis. Keep him a distant menace. The next is Lady Celine de Versey. Short, voluptuous, long brown hair blooming out around her wolf mask. An observant player might realize that all those in Amdis's quote-unquote family, his inner circle, have wolf masks on. No one else does. Lady de Versey is Amdis's lover. She moves with incredible grace, plays with her necklace, an impressive pendant. She has black eyes. Something else your players can discover with the right kind of check is shared by all people in the Predator masks. The next is Lord Andreas Montrione. Tall, thin, long dark hair worn loose, a fox mask, black eyes. He's a musician and a name dropper. He can blab gossip about the other vampires to a PC that happens to be wearing a Predator mask. If they're wearing a prey mask, he'll encourage them to stay close to him and make unsettling comments about how delicious they look. He may divulge the information that the main festivities, the hunt, is set to kick off at midnight, when your players then inevitably ask. Right now, it's about 10:30. The next NPC is Wilford Camden. He has gray hair and a beard well trimmed. He's a traveling salesman, jovial. Sadly, he's wearing a mouse mask. This man, conveniently for the vampires who plan on eating him around midnight, has no ties to this area. He's far from anyone who might wonder what became of him. He's just a lovely person, and he hasn't figured out his impending fate. Next is Kahina, my favorite. She's a dark-skinned, flawless beauty, long gray hair and elegant braids down her back. A wolf mask, she's part of the family. She's incredibly haughty, but her most important trait is that she is bored to her very core. Bored with immortality, bored with this place, bored with Amdis and his cronies. A PC who succeeds on really charming her might discover she's dangerously bored. She doesn't want to know the details of what your little group is up to, but she can sense that the PCs are here to cause some kind of trouble. She likes trouble. A very successful persuasion roll might convince her to help the party in some small way. Your players have probably noticed by the time they're chatting up NPCs that they are trapped in this ballroom. But the woodland creature-headed servants are disappearing and reappearing from the very walls themselves. There's many ways for the party to realize this, and that the servants are able to do this. There's also many ways for them to figure out that each servant has on a big ring with the Amdis family crest. They wave it at the walls and then are able to walk right through. A thing Lady Kahina might do for them, if and so inclined, is to give a party member one of those rings, only if they promise to make mischief with it. The next NPC is Jacqueline Casimir. She's a local woman who just moved to the area. She's deeply uneasy, as she should be, in her rabbit mask. She and her husband are simple tanners who just set up shop very recently in the nearby village. She doesn't know what this Lord Amdis could possibly want from them, inviting them to a fancy party. Too fancy. They don't belong here. She's been drinking her worries and is a bit unsteady on her feet. Her instincts are good. Her husband, on the other hand, she's lost track of him, but she knows he's having the time of his life somewhere. That husband is Sander Casimir, short and stocky, bright red hair blooming out from behind a boar's mask. He's very drunk, laughing, chatting, neglecting his wife, of course. He's impossible to miss, acting just slightly outside of what's appropriate. Too loud, too raucous, holding court with a group of other prey masks. I had one party get very attached to this doomed couple, and they actually, impressively, wound up finding a way to save them. There is one way that I know of for the players to save some people in this room. I'm sure there's other ways I haven't imagined yet that one of your players or one of my future players will come up with. That's the beauty of D&D. There is definitely one way, though, and we'll talk about it a little later on. I hate to put innocent people in front of your players and not give them any way to help them. Finally, there's Wolfram. Tall, muscular, dirty brown hair and a man bun held in place with a ceremonial dagger. Another wolf mask. His clothing is high quality but old-fashioned. He rolls a coin constantly between his fingers. Quietly clever and extremely intimidating, he doesn't approve of this hunt. It's too cowardly for him. Shooting fish in a barrel, he might say, to a PC that approached him in a predator mask. He'll be very, very dismissive of anyone trying to talk to him in a prey mask. I mentioned earlier, there's something for everyone to do in this room. Clerics and paladins can sense the presence of the undead, all these vampires. Bards can distract with a song or a joke. They can charm and extract information from the other partygoers. This is really a place for the face of the party to shine. Fighter types can assess the situation, finding a tactical escape route by noticing the lack of doors and windows and how the servants are still managing to get around with those special rings. They might talk a servant into a corner and put a quick, quiet end to them and get a ring. Remember, you can use the Darkling stat block for them if you like. They only have 13 hit points, so it could definitely be possible to take them out in one round before they can raise an alarm. Just make sure you know what you want to have happen if they somehow utterly fail at this in the middle of a room full of vampires. It could be a short one-shot. Of course, sending a rogue around the room to retrieve rings for the party only makes sense. Magic wielders can explore the illusion magic present in the room and maybe find a spicy magic item on a vampire to try to steal. Druids and rangers can talk to the animals wandering around and discover very unsettlingly that despite their magically induced placid appearance, each animal is frothing with terror on the inside. They don't know why they're here, and this place smells of death and danger. The signet rings on the servants are the keys to escaping this space and starting the second half of the adventure. I've already described several ways they can acquire them. Once they've got a few, they don't need one for every party member if they're clever, but once they've got enough, they can take turns disappearing through a wall, hopefully sneakily, and into the manor beyond in search of the Midnight Relic, whatever you decided it is. Once they get out of the ballroom, it's a good time for a snack break. If they've managed to do a lot of role playing, give them a pat on the back, a round of applause. Don't forget snacks during the break. Maybe cupcakes with little puncture holes on the top and some cherry syrup like a vampire bit into them. Cookies shaped like fingers. There's a whole magical world of macabre snacks you could make for a game like this. Side quest, ho! To Pinterest, my fine fellows. Once your players have empty bladders and full plates, very important, you can describe the dark corridor they find themselves in. There's a very different, very lonely feeling in this part of the manor. A cleric or paladin might detect a palpable odor of decay here. The decor is still grand, but it's falling slowly into ruin. The shadows are thick, and it's very quiet. All they can hear is the ticking of a clock in the distance, and, quickly approaching, the footsteps of what they can only assume must be more servants coming with more trays. They need to quickly exit this area and start making their way towards the library tower. I don't include any encounters as they travel through the manor to the tower, but you absolutely could if you were looking to make a longer adventure. I use this time to build the spooky ambiance, lean into the Gothic horror theme. I describe how one of the party members looks down and notices that all of the party members' shadows are trying to kill each other, stabbing, strangling, hacking. Startled, they look up and everyone is fine. They look back down and the shadows are normal once again. They might pass through spots of extreme, inexplicable cold. You could put con saves there and give a little psychic damage if they fail, or a wisdom save. Maybe just like a D4's worth of damage. One party member glances at a large window that they're passing by and sees the ghostly head of a young woman floating there. Just the head. Or perhaps she has a neck, and that neck gets longer and longer and longer until she disappears. Whenever you're ready for them to, allow the party to reach the first floor of the library tower. Lay out your map if you've made one. If I can find a way to share my maps for this adventure without getting in trouble with Dungeon Fog or somehow doxing myself, I will add them to the description of this video sometime next week. I don't have time to fiddle with it tonight, but check back for that. Anyhow, I put the maps down. I describe to them everything they can easily see without needing to make any checks. This room is very open, tall ceilings, made mostly of finely polished stone. There's a large cathedral-like window, and moonlight is falling through it, making a beautiful, eerie pattern on the floor. There are 2 large angelic statues. There's an enormous mosaic on the floor in the middle of the room that depicts a skull with 1 bright red eye and 2 horns. On either side of the room is a matching set of spiral staircases that go up. As I let them loose in this space, I tell them that from here on out, if they want to walk around and explore things, they need to show me the route they're going to take. This is a space where they can start triggering different things. A clever party might start using their were-raven abilities here to gain fly speed and not have to step on things. But it's more fun if they do step on things, so maybe they won't think of that. If you're pressed for time, you could make this room very, very uneventful, just an entranceway. But if you have time, there's a few points of interest. One of the fun things in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is that it contains a section about curses, and there's some fun ones in there. I particularly enjoyed a charming little curse called Faceless Malice. I put this curse on every single object in the library tower that has some kind of face. All the statues, all the stuffed mounted wildlife trophies. If it's got some kind of fake eyeballs, it can give your players this curse. The angel statues in this room have it, for example. If any of your players decide to actively investigate these statues, they have to make a DC 12 wisdom save. On a failed save, they feel themselves being pulled into the eyes of this statue until they suddenly find themselves blinded, deafened, and rendered unable to speak. When they turn in panic back to face their party, it looks like this unfortunate PC's face is gone. Just blank flesh. How are those words for ya? Blank flesh. This book has this effect lasting for 1 minute. I think it's more fun if it lasts until one of their party members casts Restoration or Remove Curse, something like that. If you do that, though, make sure someone in the party has that ability, or place something further up the tower they could find to fix it, partially at least. I don't like making a party member entirely useless indefinitely. That's not very fun for the player, and we're here to have fun. The most interesting thing in this room is the mosaic on the floor. If they step on it, a projection of an enormous demonic creature appears. One glowing red eye, big horns, flames, wings, the whole shebang. It warns them that it guards the treasures of Lord Amdis's tower. Once it realizes Lord Amdis isn't there at the moment, though, it proposes a deal to the party. He's been enslaved by Lord Amdis. Either they will be clever and return to him the gem that is his other eye and set him free, or they are fools and they will all be dead. Lord Amdis has taken this gem that would set him free and put it around the neck of one of his pets that he allows to wander the tower, a tiny, spiteful creature that taunts the demon. Again, don't make this interaction too long or too detailed. Don't give too much information. You want some mystery in your monsters. If the players flat out refuse to help the demon or insult him in some way, the floor will turn into a pool of maggots. I don't know why I love the pool of maggots so much. I only got to get one of my players so far with that pool of maggots. Van Richten has a stat block for a maggot swarm. This isn't an enormous threat to the players, especially since they can all fly if they transform into their hybrid or raven form. But it's fun, and it might do a little damage before they make their way upstairs to the second floor. When it comes to the last battle, every little bit of damage they've taken, every resource they've used, makes a difference. This floor, the second floor, looks like you would expect a refined vampire lord's library to look. There are rows of large, heavy bookcases, statues and suits of armor that can give your players the faceless malice curse if they haven't learned their lesson on that yet. A rug, we secretly know that's a rug of smothering, running between the bookcases. Some other points of interest in this room: there are 2 enormous books, 2 volumes, set on display pedestals, one on each side of the room. They take some checks or some spells to be able to read, most likely, but one is about summoning elementals. If you're a benevolent DM, you might let a caster in the party learn the spell Conjure Elemental from this with a very high DC Arcana check. The other book is about binding demons to one's will. Wow, very topical. Or perhaps the party doesn't know it's topical yet. It might just be foreshadowing. If they didn't step on the mosaic, they don't know there's demons in play here. If they haven't stepped on the mosaic, then they're also not going to know what's going on when they notice a strange, vaguely cat-like creature watching them from the top of one of the bookcases on the opposite side of the room from wherever they came up. A red jewel gleaming from a collar around its neck. This is going to be intriguing if they haven't met the demon yet. But parties that have met the demon are definitely going to have thoughts about getting their hands on that gem. Thankfully, most people who like to play D&D are going to be tempted to grab a red gem no matter what. This creature's ears are a bit too pointed to be a simple cat, the claws too sharp, the tail much too long. This creature, my friends, is a Grimishka. A delightful little monster that you'll be familiar with if you've poked around Ravenloft material before, or if you've poked around the Githyanki Creche in Baldur's Gate 3. This floor is where the combat portion of the adventure will probably kick off. The Grimishka is a potential combat. There are ways they could trick or steal the gem away, or convince or charm the monster into letting them take it. One party traded a rabbit that they had liberated from the ballroom to the Grimishka in exchange for the gem. That was dark. If they take the gem from her neck without her consent, she poofs out of existence. If the players pick up anything in this space other than that gem, or if they step on the rug that is secretly one of smothering, By the way, if you're not familiar with the Rug of Smothering, you can find that stat block in the Basic Monsters Manual or online. It's really pretty self-explanatory. It's a rug. It tries to smother people to death. If they step on the rug or touch anything in this room, a combat is triggered. It turns out the large books on the pedestals we talked about are bound in human skin. That skin unwraps itself from the books and becomes a particularly grotesque monster from Van Richten called a boneless. This one is disturbingly self-explanatory too. It's an animated, undead skin that bludgeons and tries to envelop your players. It schlorps around doing its evil business. That's the greatest gift I have for you in this video, perhaps in my channel altogether. That is the word schlorp. You don't need it for a lot of situations, but for some, like humanoid skin moving across the floor towards your players, schlorp is the only word that will do. Between the schlorping boneless and the rug, enveloping is the name of the game here. Things get real spicy if they piss off the Grimishka somehow and she joins the fight. There's the potential for several players to be disabled by things having enveloped them, and then the Grimishka to have a spell cast on it and all hell to break loose. Otherwise, this combat should be pretty well balanced for a third level party. It shouldn't take too long, and should soften your players up just a little bit very nicely for the final floor of the library. I forgot to mention that on either side of this room, the spiraled staircases, they continue up one more floor. As they enter this final floor, describe for them how they hear a distant clock chime the midnight hour, and the hairs or feathers on their body rise as they shiver, and the sound of screams drift out from the ballroom into the night. Somewhere the hunt has begun. The third floor of the tower is Lord Amdis's personal study. There's journals about his coven, who he trusts and who he doesn't. There's even an entry where it appears he's been gathering information on a secret society called the Scarlet Sash. Uh-oh. There's his desk. If you gave the party the crystal eye that tells them where the Midnight Relic is, it's going to indicate that it's somewhere in this very sturdy desk. But where is not immediately apparent. There are some taxidermy stag heads on the wall, wolf heads, which, you guessed it, have the ability to inflict the Faceless Malice curse. A bearskin rug can do the same thing, or can turn into an undead bear, if that got you excited. They're going to be scared of that rug by this point if you've done your job well and they've explored anything up to this point. There are 2 large leaded glass windows. This is very important because your party is going to need a quick means of escape, and they're were-ravens, so they can fly. That's promising. Windows are great. Very significantly, there is a skeleton of a large demon lying on a chaise lounge. Very posh. In its eye socket is a red gem. A successful investigation on this desk is going to reveal that carved into the side of Lord Amdis's desk is a star. At each point on the star, there's a red gem. One of them is missing. It's pretty obvious they need to place a gem there to get the item they've come here to steal. I've yet to have a party find that confusing. Everyone gets it. If they have the gem from the Grimishka and try to place it in, it'll be the right size and shape and fit into the space, but nothing happens. The demon's skeleton and the gem in its eye can't be avoided, it seems. The demon must be messed with in order to progress, and there are several different ways this climactic interaction can go. If they try to force their way into the secret compartment of the desk somehow, the demon will awake and very dramatically become flesh and blood and tower over them. They'll have a choice to make. Either they can give the demon his other eye, provided they got it, and set him free. If they do that, he will allow them 3 wishes before he calls his demon horde forth from another plane and begins laying waste to the vampires and their manor house in revenge for his enslavement. This is the player's opportunity, if they're smart, to ensure their safe escape, save some of the vampire's victims if they're so inclined, and get the relic they need. If they're not smart, that's going to be so much better. Let's be honest. You're at the end of the adventure and chaos is the best. If your party doesn't feel warm and fuzzy about releasing a demon and they refuse to help him, or if they didn't manage to get the gem from the Grimishka, then they are, pardon my French, fucked. Roll initiative. They need to try to smash open or roll an impossibly high lockpick. Not actually impossible. Let's be clear on that. It's very, very difficult. Lockpick on the desk to get the relic and escape out the window before the demon kills them. You can use any demon stat block you like, or another intimidating creature with a fly speed that you simply skin as a demon. Make sure it is way OP for the players, and make sure they know that. You can absolutely make clear as day, when you assess this situation, you see there's no victory to be had here. You need to get this relic and try to survive. It can be fun flavor to give that realization to one of the fighters or barbarians. You assess this enemy and know that it's beyond you. That's one scenario. Now let's rewind. Demon Skeleton is on the chaise lounge, and they need the eye gem to get into the desk. If they take the gem from his eye socket, by any means, mage hand, whatever, the same thing will happen. He'll wake up and they'll have the same choice. Third possible scenario, if they have the second gem and put it in his other eye socket, now he has 2 eye gems. He's free. The demon will rise up and flesh out, etc., and automatically thank them in a scary and demeaning kind of way and offer them their wishes. One way or another. If they manage to get into the compartment that has this MacGuffin, the big quest item, the Midnight Relic, there are going to be 2 things in the compartment. One is, of course, the Midnight Relic. As I said, you can make it anything you want. It just needs to give off powerful, evil energy and clearly be the thing they were looking for. I chose to make my Midnight Relic something called a Necrocore. This is another item from Van Richten's. It's basically a nifty crystal tube in which the wrathful spirit of a defeated lich resides. Your players don't need to necessarily know that. Just describe what it looks like. The tube with intricate metal caps, the crystal, and inside it a swirling green miasma, tortured faces appearing in it before melting away. It can, again, be anything that floats your boat, sinks your ship, blows back your hair. Whatever it is, it needs to be real bad if it gets unleashed. Make it your own. Tell me in the comments what your nefarious Midnight Relic would be. The other thing in the compartment is a very plain-looking little pouch. I've never had a party not take both items, relic and pouch, which is fun, and we'll find out why in just a second. Whatever the circumstances at this point, once they have the relic, they need to get out the window. The leaded glass means they'll either need someone to make a really good strength check to crash a humanoid-sized hole for them to go through if they're in their hybrid form, or they'll have to use an action, possibly now during a vital combat, to turn into their little raven form to escape. That pretty much brings us to the end of our adventure. Your party might strike a morally gray deal and get all their heart's desires. They may die at the hands of an enormous demon. They may narrowly escape into the night, with or without their vital mission complete. You know how any good horror story will just refuse to end on a happy note? There's always an after-credits scene that implies there's more spooky shenanigans to come. That's what I use the pouch for. The unassuming pouch they scooped up when they also grabbed the relic. I describe how the party members who escaped fly off and make it to safety. They come to a weary rest for the night, but what they don't see is as soon as they've closed their eyes, an impossibly long, spindly, clawed hand emerges from the pouch. And that's where we'll end our tale of horror. Or perhaps the horrors are just beginning. You don't have to explain what this creature is coming out of the pouch. There's just this rising sense of dread, and it all winds up unresolved. Another thing you could do is, if some PCs died in the manor, you could describe them being turned into vampires by an angry Lord Amdis. That's a fun cliffhanger ending too. What do you think? Thank you if you stuck around for this whole video. It was a long one, I know, but like I said, it is a well fleshed out adventure, ripe for the picking. I've got everything here that you need. There is one variation you might consider to this story. I've only done it once, but it was chef's kiss. If you have a group of players who are your friends and who consent to this kind of thing, you can secretly, before the game starts, tell one or two of them, again, secretly is key here, tell one or two of them that secretly, before going on this mission, their character plans on betraying the group, if they can, and making off with the relic for themselves. Tell the other players secretly that they've been suspicious of these other party members and intend to leave them behind if they see any signs of tomfoolery. Mission above all else. This kind of potential PvP play isn't for everyone, but it can be very spicy and fun for the right group, specifically in a one-shot where it's a one-time thing and the stakes are low. That's it, friends. Is this a one-shot you might give a try this spooky season? Let me know in the comments how it goes if you do. Stay tuned. Again, each Thursday this month, there's going to be 2 more fresh, brand new Halloweeny one-shots for you to steal and inflict upon your players come October. Also, we are a hair on a witch's chin away from 500 subscribbles. Stay tuned for how we're going to celebrate that next week. Also stay tuned as I try to add maps to the description of this video next week. Send me good vibes. I'm an elder millennial. The technology is not always my friend. This adventure taught me a lot about the value of maps, though, in a spooky setting. Pro tip, if you're stuck filling out a dungeon with traps and objects, start making the map. Populate it with fun graphics, and it'll become obvious which spots should be of interest. You all are the best. I hope you have the most delightful pumpkin spice season. Thank you for exploring the feminine urge to play Dungeons and Dragons with little old me, Owlbear Rogue. Ooh.